When talking about Celts, it is impossible to skip through their intrinsic and mystical art of underlying strokes and lines. Serpents, wines, and human heads. These elements, both hidden and obvious in their expression, are cornerstones of the ancient Celtic art they have left us. Despite of that, it is also one of the biggest mysteries of ancient world, as are many other things about Celts. Celts didn't write anything about themselves and barely wrote at all, as they didn't have the tradition of literacy. They left barely any written records of their own, instead relying on oral tradition, cultivating communication and record-keeping through poems and bards. Today we have to discern most about their way of life through archaeological findings, and the often biased records of Roman and Greek ancient authors. The earliest Celtic art originated in the 5th century BC, in various centers from western France to Czech Republic. The collapse of the early Iron Age settlements and the rise of Celtic urban centers were accompanied by the arrival of new methods of artistic expression. It was temperate Europe's first complex art, and the Celts' use of curved geometry remained stylistically unmatched among nearby ancient cultures. Having said that, it is important to keep in mind that Celtic art, like its multiple ancient languages and dialects, varied greatly across Europe. Across eras and regions there were a few common elements that brought unity to dispersed peoples that we, perhaps unfairly, label under a single term, Celts. The Celtic La Tene culture spread across Europe, not just with mass migrations outlined by ancient authors, but also by smaller groups and individuals, like merchants, adventurers, mercenaries, artisans, and more. These explorers influenced local styles and connected Celtic and native communities. In some cases, old communities of the early Iron Age completely adopted and adapted Celtic lifestyle and cultural characteristics, albeit with a local touch. In this way, the La Tene culture spread even to the peoples other than Celts, without them ever settling in those regions. Compared to the preceding Sicular art of Hallstatt culture and northern Italy communities, where depictions of birds of prey, bovine animals, deer, horses, sphinx, griffins, and so on are prevalent, now we see motifs of dragons, serpents, and snakes intricately displayed on swords and other objects. La Tene metalsmiths designed complex vegetal patterns supported by underlying geometry. The new iconography and symbolism largely reflect the new religious beliefs, their expressions, and new social relationships. Like previous prehistoric art, this shows different ways of seeing the world. Celtic art also reveals regional and tribal variations and interpretations. The Celtic artifacts depict creatures and plants lurking within the artistic shapes, showing their world where divine beings mingle with nature, influencing objects, people, their destinies, and attributes. Fantastical creatures and these patterns could protect a decorated object and its bearer, or affect whoever set their eyes upon it. These patterns were often made with a decent level of geometric knowledge, probably influenced by the ancient Greek mathematical principles and discoveries. It is still debatable on what scale did the imported knowledge from the Mediterranean world contribute to the development of their art, especially compared to the local knowledge of Celts gained through their own technical skills and natural observations. Yet in the ancient Celtic art, we can often see mingling of temperate and Mediterranean Europe. That's because artisans of La Tene culture drew inspirations and technical skills from many different things, not just surrounding natural world, but also imported items and art from the Mediterranean civilizations, like Etruscans and Greeks. While these became catalysts of art and development of new styles, Celts interpreted them according to their own aesthetic taste and preferences, instead of simply trying to copy them as they were. Archaeology shows us a contrasting perspective from that of ancient Mediterranean civilizations, like Romans, who considered Celts savages. While Roman art was classical and realistic, Celts at first flourished in the abstract depictions and fantastical ornaments. Only later, with the expanding power of Rome and the process Romanization, does such Mediterranean style spread among the Celtic tribes and communities. Coins are the most prominent example of this, with the Celts adapting the visage of Mediterranean gods, rulers, and other classical depictions. Celtic art was functional and it served a variety of ever-changing needs. It has been categorized into multiple styles or stages, which spread across time and space. One of such styles is sword style, dating from around the 3rd century BC. It is a more two-dimensional, engraved style, composed of diverse curvilinear designs with hints of plant and animal motifs. These patterns are most often found on the mouths of sword scabbards, giving the style its name. Some of the most wonderful examples have been found in present-day Hungary, Slovakia, and Slovenia. Similar depictions were found in France, though portrayed with subtle, regional variations. Different regional styles have also been identified in Switzerland and the British Isles. In this way, the sword style is better defined as an overlapping term that encompasses multiple related, regional styles. Swords were decorated throughout the Iron Age and the entire prehistory, in order to intimidate your foe, impress peers, or invoke divine favor. Weapon ornaments were very visible indicators of a warrior's power, prestige, and position. Other styles include, but are not limited to, vegetal, plastic, and mirror styles. Objects could be decorated with elements of different styles, or combining those into a new hybrid form. Many of Celtic art and decorations were vague and secretive. In many instances, they were meant only for the owner and the gods, and those who knew where and how to look. If an enemy saw them, it was probably already too late. For example, all across Europe individual sword scabbards were inset with a motif of a pair of fantastical beasts, dragon pairs. However, not all of these warrior symbols are obvious. Some of these presumably protective motifs were hidden within the decoration. Beyond just decoration, artistic motifs gave objects additional significance. They gave a carrier status and importance among the few who recognized its symbolism. Along with warriors, artisans also utilized motifs of fantastical creatures surrounded by or hidden within entangled fauna and geometric shapes in order to further decorate jewelry, dress pieces, vessels, statues, weapons, and riding equipment. One of the most widespread Celtic motifs was the human head or face. Diodorus of Sicily reported that the Celts hung severed heads of their enemies around the neck of their horses, brought them home and nailed them to their walls. The heads of their main rivals were treated like trophies, embalmed, carefully handled, and displayed to foreigners to see. To what extent Celtic art reflects such practices, or they had other, additional meanings, remains unknown. Motifs displaying the event of birth are also common among the La Tene culture, though such motifs could be found in art pieces across Europe since Neolithic onwards. Another prevalent motif is that of a boar, especially among warriors, who depicted boars on their weapons in the hope to be blessed with the animal's symbolic power, courage, and aggression. Many bronze statues have also been found at the sites of worship. While the ancient writings describe Celts' ferociousness, boasting, bravery, and alcohol consumption, their own art gives us a different picture, a more gentle nature of rich culture and art, in line with their own spiritual world, which was closely tied to nature, flora, and fauna. All these things the Celts held in reverence, which they then depicted through their art. Their aesthetics of fascinating geometrical patterns and circulinear motifs remained intriguing even to the modern public.